I don't know how many of you remember this. I mean, I was on the air at the time, and I remember August 6th, 2011, just a few months after the successful raid on the compound of Osama Bin Laden, and it resulted, of course, in his death. This afternoon, earlier this morning, 3 families of Navy SEAL Team 6 Special Forces servicemen, along with 1 family member of an Army National Guardsman, took place in a press conference to disclose never-before-revealed information about how and why their sons, along with 26 others, died in a fatal helicopter crash in Afghanistan on August 6, 2011, just months after the Bin Laden raid. You also have, at that press conference, were retired Special Team 6 Special Operations servicemen, retired military experts, verifying their accounts of how and why they say the government is responsible, or in as much responsible for the deaths of their sons as is the Taliban. That's what they feel. And joining us right now on the line are 2 of those parents, Bill and Karen Vaughn, who lost their Navy SEAL son Aaron in that helicopter crash. Bill and Karen, thank you so much for taking the time, and we all still mourn for your loss, especially after learning what we learned today.
Thank you so much for having us and taking the time to cover this story. Thank you.
No, I can't think of anything more important to talk about. Bill, why don't we start with you? Tell us what was said at the press conference, what was revealed, and then we'll talk about going back to that horrible day and the aftermath of it.
Everything wasn't revealed today, but we didn't have time to touch on all the things that the family has been able to find out, but several things. The fact that the Afghans are in from the top to the bottom on all the planning of the special op missions. They know everything that's going on. We know that the chopper went in that night where 3.5 hours of NATO activities were already underway with a load of Navy SEALs and Special Forces and Army Air Force and Navy, and because of the rules of engagement, no pre-assault fire was allowed to even make the enemy keep their head down so that our guys could get on the ground safely. And then after the chopper was shot down here again because of the rules of engagement, the men who fired the RPGs were not taken out. And then we just found out a couple of months ago, Karen and I did, that if the things that we've learned are not bad enough, and that our sons died at least recklessly by the upper echelon of the military and our Defense Department and the administration. If that wasn't bad enough, at the ramp ceremony in Bagram Air Force Base, the military allowed an imam to desecrate their bodies with an Islamic prayer that he helped pray their souls into hell and infidels, and then in the end said that the Muslims are the winners. So we found these things out, and we as families we've been working on this for over a year and a half now, and we want answers. We've been able to work with Larry and get a little traction, and now we want some answers. We want somebody to tell us what really happened, and then what can be done to prevent it for other families.
Now, just explain again for me, because to some it might sound like you were, you had a personal problem with the imam, but you're saying you found out that the imam actually gave a derogatory message or prayer over the bodies of those SEALs?
No, sir. I do not have a problem with the imam.
Right.
Yeah, we know what imams do. What I have a problem with is that as our sons' bodies lay there, as the American warriors' bodies lay there, their First Amendment rights and freedom of religion were violated, not by the imam, by the American government.
Okay, I got you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got you. Where do you go from here with this? I mean, Larry Klayman, I know he's working with you, and I know my good friend General Paul Vallely, who was on the show yesterday. I know he was down there. He flew into Washington for the event, and I know there are a lot of good people on your side, and I know if America knew of this story, they certainly would be interested and certainly care and certainly want answers. But how do you get that attention from a media that it doesn't even want to talk about Benghazi? How do you get that attention?
Steve, this is Larry Klayman. How are you?
Hey, Larry, how are you?
And we're sitting here with our clients right now. We're plotting, further strategy. This was just step one,
Right.
The press conference. But we are going to press for congressional investigations and hearings. But we are not going to rest on that. We're going to be pursuing our own legal actions and having our own fate in our own hands, because it's not just a question of the fallen sons of my clients. It's a question of the integrity of the U.S. military and our entire government, particularly under President Barack Hussein Obama. We need justice here, but we also need to clean it up for the future, because our republic is slipping away. And that's our attitude, and that's our approach, and that's our desire. Hopefully this will galvanize the American people to realize what we're up against.
I'd like to ask Karen. Karen, what do you know? What was the mission? What was the mission that where all these wonderful special forces, Navy SEAL team members were loaded onto this one plane? What was the urgency of this mission?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question, because that question raises a lot of other questions. In the mission planning that night, we had found out through intelligence that we'd like answers on where that intelligence came from, but we found out that a high-level Taliban leader, Kari Tahir, had been located in the Tangi River Valley. We sent the Rangers in that night to capture him, and after 3.5 hours of the Rangers securing that area, throughout that entire time, we had been watching two men leave the northeast region of that village. We believed one of them to be Kari Tahir himself. So we kept eyes on that man. And finally, the decision was made to send in a quick reactionary force to capture him at 2:30 in the morning. And the problem with that is a quick reactionary force should not take place unless somebody is in serious trouble. Quick reactionary forces are launched when the original reports came out that the Rangers were being overrun. That would warrant a quick reactionary force, because the whole logic behind a quick reactionary force is you're coming into a very heated area. And so that just lends to the logic of, why did we do that? Just to pick up a man we had eyes on. So your question raises a lot of other questions that we want to answer.
Yeah, and Karen and Bill, Bill, you could take this. I was struck. I'm remembering back to that day, or when we found out about it, and I was on WOR radio here in New York at the time, and I remember saying, I don't understand, and I'm a layman, and maybe that's it, but I don't understand why it took so much approval up and down the chain to try to get Osama Bin Laden, because what if he wasn't in there? What if our guys got killed, God forbid? What if there were injuries? How terrible it would look for the president, and how bad it would be for our morale and for our troops, and for putting them in harm's way, and months of, you got to be sure he's in there. And then it seemed to me, haphazardly, you load all of these elite forces onto a plane. And I'm thinking, how did that get approved so quickly? What was the urgency there?
I'll tell you how it got approved, because this has become a way of operating because of President Barack Obama's, quote, relentless pursuit of the enemy. And so we began to operate more, I don't know how to say it, but things that families have looked at and everything, carelessly, without taking as much regard for the lives of the warriors, the lives of people flying the chopper and everything else. And that night, when they went in, we've seen testimony from men who were in the theater that night, and many of those men still ask, we don't know why the mission was necessary. Men who were there, we don't know what was going on. We don't know what the urgency was. The chopper went out that night, and under standard operating procedures, it's supposed to have 2 escorts with it. It went out that night in an area where I've already said, or where one of us said, where a firefight was going on, without any escorts. Totally against the operating procedures set down by the military.
See, that's incredible. When you talk about the rules of engagement, I'm not surprised at all. The more I learn about the rules of engagement, I mean, why don't we just handcuff or chop off the hand of each of our soldiers, because that's how they're fighting. But this is just outrageous. We're talking to Bill and Karen Vaughn, who lost their son Aaron, a Navy SEAL, in that fatal helicopter crash in Afghanistan back in August of 2011, and I believe it was 27 in total. 28?
30 in total.
30 in total. Okay, and we have Larry Clayman, of course, who's representing them as well. Let me ask you a little bit about your son, Bill and Karen. Maybe Karen, as a mom, you could take this. Aaron, I mean, my son's 13. He's wanted to be a Navy SEAL now for several years. I don't know if he'll go that route or not, but he says he will at this point. Talk a little bit about your son, so we'll have an idea of who he was.
Yeah, Aaron was a fierce but tender man. He, like your son, decided by the time he was 8 years old that he was going to be a Navy SEAL, and it really would pull a good chuckle from people because he was a lanky, skinny kid.
That's what mine is too. I say, I don't know how you're going to do it, kid. I don't get it.
They do not look like Navy SEAL material, but I will tell you one thing: God knows a warrior's heart, and God puts that in a young man's heart. And Aaron knew from the time he was a child what he had to do for this country. He was driven by a core that you just couldn't believe. He was an ethical man. He was a moral man. He was just a great human being. And what I love to tell people the most about him is Aaron wasn't afraid of anything. And just to give you a little sense of his humor, one day he told me in all seriousness, and I just started laughing. He said, "Mom, I'm not afraid of anything in this world except women." And that pretty much summed up. And I said, "I really understand that, son." But he had a hilarious heart, and even though he was this fierce warrior that could kill you with his bare hands in 2 split seconds, he also was a man that would belly laugh, throw his head back, and squint his eyes laughing over something that happened that was funny. He just was shamelessly happy, So it's been a huge loss in our family to have his presence gone from us. He has 2 little babies and a wife that he left behind. His little daughter was only 9 weeks old when her daddy died, and it's been a tough thing. But Aaron, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to tell you what a great man he was. Leaders told us that he was a light for Christ in a dark world, that he was a fearless leader headed straight to the top, and that if you gave me 5 men like Aaron, I could conquer the world. He was an amazing human being, as were all of these young men on Extortion 17. I've heard their stories. They were brilliant, young heroes, and it's shameful that we allowed them to die in this manner.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
With some other families who lost loved ones there, their sons, Doug and Sean Hamburger lost their son Patrick in the National Guard, and Charles and Marianne Strange lost their son Michael. They're sitting here with me today too, and we had someone who just left, John Dugandara, who was actually originally from Laos, interestingly enough. His son was a Navy SEAL, and they're all our clients, and they're all proceeding forward, and we hope that other families will join us, not just in memory of their fallen sons, but to clean this thing up, to make our government respect our fighting men and women, and to respect our nation.
It is so sad. I just want to finish up with one more question, and either of you could take this, either of the 2 parents. You say one of the claims, I believe, is that President Obama and Vice President Biden, in their disclosure that it was that Navy SEAL Team 6 that carried out the raid on Bin Laden, you say it put a target on the backs of that unit going forward. And when you combine that with the fact that the Afghans, as you claim, were in on these special ops missions and knew in advance, I mean, it's just like, are you looking to get them killed? I mean, do you believe that recipe of those 2 factors resulted in this?
I absolutely believe that, and I will tell you that within 24 hours of Joe Biden announcing that it was Navy SEALs that took out Bin Laden, Aaron, like I said, he wasn't afraid of anything, but he called me, and his voice was very full of fear. Very unusual for him. And he said, "Mom, listen to me." He said, "You've got to wipe your social media clean. I mean, right now, wipe everything off of it, Mom." And I said, of course, son. I mean, my heart was racing with his tone. And I said, "What's going on? I'll do it. But what's going on?" He said, "Listen, there's chatter and all of our lives are in danger, including yours, Mom. So get it cleaned up right now." So, you know, they absolutely put a target on their backs. 93 days later, they were all dead. And, you know, we happen to know from sworn military testimony that there had been a helicopter shoot-down attempt going on for weeks in that valley, and still, the actions took place that night that are so completely unacceptable, and they cost our sons their lives.
Yeah, listen.
And they cost families a life now of utter, unspeakable pain.
Listen, Bill and Karen and Larry, keep us informed. Tell your girl who set this up today to keep us informed all the way, because I want to cover this as much as we can, because this needs to be, you know, the light has to shine on this. The transparency has to be put on this, and this is just awful. And God bless all of you. And I'm sure your son, and as the case with the other parents, your sons are looking down on you, and they're applauding you from up there, because you're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
We
you.
need your help, and if people want to see more about what we did, they can find it at freedomwatchusa.org.
Right. freedomwatchusa.org. Okay, good enough, Larry.
And I'd also invite, if you don't mind, I'd also love to invite anybody to visit our website that wants to for updates that we have, as well as our blogs and things. That is forourson.us, FOROURSON.us.
forourson.us. Okay, great. Hey, thank you both, and Larry, thank you, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.